Good morning. Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It's an opportunity for me to have a spiritual conversation with a special guest, and we usually are talking about a topic relating to spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And it's always a delight to have the various guests that come on the show. And I'm actually in year 7 of Wednesdays with Willa. So you've got lots of archived videos of the show. If you can't catch it live, just know that you can watch the replay later on my Facebook page, also the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page and YouTube channels. So this will get uploaded to those as well. And I am happy to have welcomed back onto my show again, Greg Kehn.
Thank you.
Greg's been here before, and we've talked about mediumship and different aspects of things. So, for example, if you want to look at the archive videos of past shows that I've done with Greg Kehn, you can type his name in, Greg Kehn, Kehn, and you should be able to find some good past shows. Yeah,
that works.
And I think it's wonderful that we have him here because he's a long time registered medium. It's been oodles of years. I won't say eons because that's just
the secretary of the Mediums League had figured it out between my age and my years served at 144. And I said, well, I look pretty good for that age, but
he's not close to 104, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's been interesting because when I was a child, I was here with my family and my mother and grandmother on back moral mediums. So it's something that living in Lilydale and being here in the summers is wonderful, and I love it. And giving messages when I was 8 years old at Inspiration Stump and Forest Temple. So been here a little while now.
Yeah, just a little while. Not 104. Not 104. So how many years do you remember what it is for just the registered medium alone?
I think it's either 44 or 46 years.
There you go. So he's going to bring a lot of great expert information to today's show. Our topic today is moving past limitations in your mediumship. So this is more of a show that's going to be geared toward mediums. Yeah. But at some point down the road, you might decide that you want to be a student medium, a developing medium. And I want to make sure that I mention I do have some upcoming classes. In fact, this Saturday, April 13th, I'll be teaching an online Zoom class that is connecting with your spiritual support team. And that's not just spirit guides. So that comes with a handout, and then you get to watch the video later on. If you can't attend the class live, you do have that as an option to watch the video later. And it'll be up for a couple of weeks for you to watch on a special viewing page. And I also have my Mediumship Development Circle series. The next is going to be 6 weeks long for the spring session, and it will be starting on April 15th. So next Monday is when that starts. If you want to get registered for any one of those, you can go to my website, willawhite.com, and learn more information there. And if you want to take classes with Greg, because you teach mediumship classes as well, you can go to gregkehn.com.
Yeah, we do that all the time. I have classes I do free every month, and then we're going to be setting up some things for the future that would be really to sit down and really work on some teaching.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. I think, Willa, you're doing wonderful with that. I know a couple people that have been clients of mine have been coming to your class, so that's been great.
Yes, I've developed such a good core group of students that have been with me for some years now, and it's just a delightful group of spiritual souls. And we always welcome new people. The circle is available to all levels, but you have to sign up for the whole 6-week package. And if you have to miss a class, I do video the lesson portion only, but it's a breakout session thing, so they get to get and receive messages, because it's not just me lecturing; it's them actually having to have hands-on experience, because that's how we learned.
Oh, absolutely.
In circles, you have to kind of give, receive, and get used to connecting with spirit for others.
I remember being in Fellowship of the Spirit, Elaine Thomas's school, and I was with them when they first opened it in their living room over here.
Wow!
And taught for them for 46 years.
Whoosh, see? About the same length of time as being registered. Oh my goodness. Well, this is going to be great for our topic, which is moving past limitations in your mediumship. I know a lot of people, you get to a point sometimes where even in the beginning stages, the middle stages, and even if you become an advanced medium or professional medium, there are different stumbling blocks that come along the way, and there are certainly personal limitations. And I always talk about my circles as being part of spiritual unfoldment too, because as you are developing as a medium, you're also unfolding spiritually. You're having to work on your own things and the things that maybe you are a bit tight about and scared about. And
I find the biggest restrictions we have is us.
Oh, absolutely.
And
sometimes we have to have there are healthy boundaries that we have to have with all of this. But I think today we're really focusing on some of those. We'll pinpoint some of those limitations and share some ways to get over them.
Some people feel things, sense things, aware of things they would not necessarily think of themselves as a medium.
Right.
But in reality, it's mediumship.
True.
And I find some people where the biggest hurdle that I find with people starting in this would be not trusting completely what they're getting, or being able to put the dividing line in and say, all right, this I'm thinking, or this is me, versus what Spirit is actually giving me. And sometimes Spirit can come in loud and clear, and sometimes it come in very subtly.
True.
And I had a class, for the weekend there. I had one class and we did the mediumship and that. And I think getting across to people that we're all mediums. We do have that ability. It's just that we do have that challenge of trusting and recognizing what's Spirit versus what's us.
It's the number one thing. And the only way to learn that is through practice.
Yeah.
The only way to do it's not like you can read a book and go, oh, like it has to be something that you are learning by trial and error, ultimately. How to find.
People panic over the idea that I don't want to say something wrong.
Well, yes, because you have someone's
influence someone.
life in your hands, basically. Yeah.
And I find that, once you're into it and you're getting into that trust level, then it reaches a point where you're stepping beyond where your conscious part functions. And you're going to what spiritually is coming through.
Yes.
And if we let our consciousness, I refer to it when I'm teaching that, are we getting something and relaying it?
Right.
Or are we giving a straight shot from Spirit what's there? Because I find a lot of people, they'll be working on what they're picking up, but then they pick something up. And for example, one of the obvious examples would be, they get a certain wording for something that would be so meaningful to the person that's getting the message.
Yes.
But they change the wording, or they put it in their words instead of the words that they received. And the person sits there and goes, well, that doesn't sound like them. That's not how they talked.
And part of that might be because they're not necessarily receiving that information clairaudiently.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're receiving that claircognizantly. Or one of the things that's happening is they're changing the word to gentle it.
Yeah.
On occasion.
I had a gentleman one time come through from Spirit, and he had really direct things to say. And it wasn't at the person. It was just a statement he made that was what he was using those terms when he was living. And I won't repeat that.
No.
But I'm sitting there and he said, you tell them the way I'm telling you. And I looked at him and I said, you're going to have to excuse me, but this is how I'm getting it.
Yes.
And I gave it. It wasn't a private reading. It wasn't in the public.
And you would never.
And the lady sit there and went into tears. And she said, I know without a doubt that's him. Because that was one of his standard statements. And, I see people at times try to soften it or
it's
cover
important
it.
To soften it sometimes, though. It really can be. And the other part of that, though, is it's knowing the balancing act of who you're with and how that needs to play for them. But I think what you're saying is not just about language, but it goes to how do you blend with that individual and Spirit, so that what they're giving to you feels as if it's your own at the time. You get to that point of, can you feel it as if it was your own? That you almost feel like their words are coming out of your moment. There's a different feeling that happens when you're bringing through the essence of spirit in that way.
That's a depth in my mind that it's like, it's such a deep feeling of knowing that there's no doubt, there's no question, there's no wondering, it's right there, and this is what needs to be. And I also find with people that either they're trying to relay things, they get it, then they change it and give it. But I find also that is lessening the communication from spirit, because you not only are diverting it, but then you're including yourself in it. And if we can recognize the clarity of what spirit gives us, I've had it happen where spirit would give me the straight stuff, and then they would say, this is how to give it. And you get your real essence of what's there, which would be pretty tough on somebody at times. And then they're showing me that, so I really understand it. So now we can do it this way, and they gain what they need to gain from it without it being disruptive or harmful.
Right. And to your point, just to emphasize this for people who are watching this today, what he's talking about is, if sometimes what your spirit team is telling you is that you need to offer it in this way so that it will be the most healing way to express that to a client. Because sometimes things in their raw form are create more trauma, and that's the purpose of doing mediumship, is to offer comfort, to offer healing. And we do stand between the two worlds, and it does put us into the role of spiritual counselor during those times. And so we rely on our spirit team to assist in that.
Like people sometimes say, how do you govern what you say? And I said, well, I don't look at it as me sitting back and analyzing it or governing it. I feel my guides I trust. I feel their moral obligation and their commitment to what they're doing. And I know the sincerity is there without question. So when you reach that point that you have the guides that you're trusting, and you're not worrying about what's coming through, it's then you can step aside more and allow that to flow through, because I already put a complete trust in what they're giving. I know in the very beginning with people, that's very hard to do, because it's like, wait a minute, is it me? Is it them?
And that's the other part, because you want to maintain your identity. As much as they say a medium needs to be passive, you still need to be very active in this, and have those healthy boundaries, so that you can stop communication anytime if you wish. That is very important to have that going forward.
Well, you're setting guidelines within yourself that is a respectful energy of work. And if your guides are coming to you and they're at that level too, that works wonderfully. But if we allow ourselves, like I've seen some people that'll pick up on things, and they, in a valid way, felt things, but their, let's say, respect level is not the best. They're drawing entities that are not the best.
So we want to always do things that are of higher vibration. And I think this speaks to another aspect of what you were mentioning before, Greg. This, as the spirit team, in its raw form, what's being delivered is not healing, because you're bringing through a person how they were when they were here. And it's nice if we can show progression, but for a spirit that hasn't necessarily progressed as much as we would like them to, on the other side, the angels and guides and the spirit team are able to say, this is how he or she is learning. This is what they're working on. This is how they really want to say this, but they are not good at the words.
Well, I've had it happen where on the earth plane, they had a very negative energy with the person. And on the progression of someone's life on the spirit side, they've been changing and growing. And all of a sudden they pop in, and the person goes, I don't want to hear from them. And I've had that occur. And I said, let's run them in light. And I said, think of it this way. For them to be able to step in, they had to have progressed.
Right. They have to meet a certain criteria.
They had to have progressed beyond where they were on the earth plane for the spirit world to allow them to step in. And then it sort of softens the energy a bit that it's like, okay, maybe they are progressing. And I don't push anything like that, but it's like, I look at it as for the spirit world to allow them to come, had to be some changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes what I refer to it as version 2.0, that you're getting version 2.0. But I always ask the folks that come to me from spirit to show me how they were when they were here, because that's how the client is going to recognize them.
Right.
If they all just come through as beings of light, it's not the reality of who they were when they were here, the humanness of them, the quirks, the flaws, however you want to say that. And then, show me how they've changed, or show me what they're building on at this point. And it can be very, very healing for a client.
I had one reading that I remember that was really interesting. The lady had a very hard time with the father because the father worked all the time. He was hardly ever home. And she was resenting that he wasn't there. And his belief system was a belief system that I'm working really hard to take care of my family and to give my daughter everything I could give her. And she had everything you could possibly need or want. And
maybe not the pony.
Yeah. And when he had passed, she was still angry at the idea that he wasn't there. Because she wanted
the time with him.
Yeah.
Instead of the material security.
And when he came through then and he explained to her that, it was very hard to be able to keep everything in the order that it was in, because everything was there in the physical world that you can imagine.
Right.
But that was his way of loving, caring, taking care of.
That's his love language.
And when she finally saw that, she came back another time and she said to me, she says, I want to talk to my dad.
Aww.
And she says, I want to say I'm sorry. She says, because I didn't understand his way of loving.
Right, right.
So we sometimes can really divert things from what someone else means or is doing and feeling, and we're not realizing it.
Well, I think there's a maturing that happens within people too. They start to recognize that person most likely did the best that they knew how to do at the moment. And there's how when you see your parents from childlike eyes versus adult eyes, and how that can shift and change a relationship. And sometimes you're like, well, they did this wrong and they did that wrong, but then they're like, but they did this right. They did. And so I'm not saying that every parent is perfect under the sun, but you start to recognize the humanness of all of that and start to not take it personally.
Well, you know what
you start to not take it as personally.
I many times have said to people, here's how they came in and here's how they're equipped. And a part of being equipped in whatever way they're equipped in is also the challenge of lesson, not only for them, but others.
Yes.
And we're needing to look at things not as I want it this way or they didn't do this, but okay, why did that experience occur and what am I learning from it? And if we can look at it in that form, we're then really, truly here and growing in the manner that we're meant to be.
Yes.
Because, like I've many times heard people say, well, nothing's perfect. Well, it isn't the idea of being perfect. It's the idea of recognizing we're here to learn, grow, and progress. And especially in a family energy that we're with for years and years, what are we learning and progressing in? And also I find the ability to forgive the little things that may upset you that they either said or did or didn't do.
Right.
My grandmother always taught me as a child that we have our lessons we're learning. But there's a whole nother set of lessons due to that lesson.
Oh, yeah.
And if we look at that lesson and say, okay, here's a singular lesson, in what way did we handle that or learn that or gain that? Now, we're responsible for what we do. No matter what it is we do, we're responsible for it. But we're also responsible for what we did not do that we should have done. And there's a whole lot of people don't think about the secondary level.
Right.
They're only thinking the first level.
That's true.
And if we look at the secondary level, what did we not do that we should have done? Be it forgiving, be it caring, be it responsible. I mean, whatever form it takes. But it's like there's just countless circumstances that can occur that we look at handling it in one manner, or let's say one answer, where in reality, what could we have done differently?
I mean, you're talking about action versus inaction.
Yeah.
They still count, and then inaction also counts as action.
Yes, absolutely. It's taking action by not taking action.
Yes.
And I find some people that get that, and they'll just sit there and look at me for a moment like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
The light goes on.
Yeah.
But, I've had it in my own life. I mean, believe me, I've done that.
We're all learning, and certainly there's a sequence to learning that happens, but there's also a spiral approach. Sometimes you have to circle around to what you've learned before so you can actually build up.
Yeah.
So learning is not always a hierarchy of a ladder in a vertical sense or a horizontal sense, a sequencing, that there's a spiral that can occur with the learning.
Well, like my grandmother.
And that's the same thing with learning mediumship too.
That's like my grandmother said to me. She said, well, are we going to have a speed bump in life and really be observant and aware and learn everything we can from that speed bump? Or are we going to run into a mountain and have to climb it?
There you go.
And our literal choice is, would we rather do the speed bump? So let's be really alert and aware what we're here to learn.
True.
And I always found it fascinating that it's like you see some people that they're supposedly doing everything right. And their opinion is they're doing everything right. And I look at it and it's like, I just want to step back from it because it's like, okay.
They're life, but also in your life as a medium, you have to step back and reevaluate at different points and say, how is this serving me? How is this serving the greater good?
Yeah.
All of those kinds of experiences of the learning that's necessary for them. So
good points. I look at healing as a part of mediumship, and I look at healing as what are we being able to share that these people that are receiving the reading, how much of that can really be this meaningful energy that shifts their life, thought, and feeling, as well as shifting what they perceived in the past. Remember, what we perceived in the past is what forms our future.
It absolutely does. And that feeds into the topic for today of limitations, because sometimes what we're hitting up against in the limitations in our own mediumship development are about regressive behaviors that we've had.
Absolutely.
In relationship with other people that then kind of come to the forefront in our message delivery too. Yeah.
I remember in my life, in the physical world, I remember being incredibly angry twice. I mean, just
ferociously
really
going to explode volcano level.
I mean, volcano. And a friend of mine that I grew up with, I knew for years, and he looked at me the one time he was there and he experienced me being upset. And he looked at me and he goes, Greg, I'm glad they're not anywhere that you can reach them. And it was like, I had 3 days of exhaustion after that because
pumping all that stuff through you, like the Hulk, right?
Yeah, and it was just like all that energy.
You almost turned green.
Yeah, I was like just so furious, and it's like 2 times I remember my lifetime having that happen, and I thought, boy, I was shot for days. I mean, my energy level
kind of not worth it,
to some extent. And it was like. And Spirit came to me after the second time occurred, which was years apart. Yeah. But they came to me and they said, have we learned something from this?
Is that working for you?
And I really felt they had promoted the explosion so I could fully experience the idea of what was really going on.
Because the aftermath wasn't fun.
Yeah. And the harmfulness you created to yourself.
Energetically.
Energetically was amazing.
Yeah, because you don't want to fry your circuits. When you're sensitive, you got to be a bit careful about frying your circuits about these things. Which leads me to another limitation, because sometimes what's happening energetically with a spirit, you have to put the kibosh on it because you have to protect your own energy. So I want to reinforce, in terms of our topic today, moving past limitations in your mediumship, especially if you're clairsentient. Please don't feel that you have to give over your body to spirit. If you feel a physical thing that's happening in your body that the spirit had when they were here, be it a physical condition or their actual passing, so-called death, only allow that for 2 to 3 seconds. These are healthy limits that are in your mediumship. When we talk about moving past limitations on a physical mediumship sense, it would be more of just allowing them to access that information for the most healing, productive, evidential mediumship that you can.
And to me, it's like they do just enough so you recognize it.
Yes.
And that's it. It's
move
gone.
It along.
And
because you got to get to the next piece of information.
Yeah.
And you don't want to dwell there with them.
I find some people now, like I've seen it happen with some healers, where their thought of healing was, I'm healing them. And I was looking at the energy, and it's like, and the one lady said to me, she says, well, I did 3 healings and I'm exhausted.
Right. Magnetic healing.
And I said, wait a minute. I said, God's, our battery's little. God's energy is endless.
Yeah, spiritual healing is
I said, so it should flow through us, and we should be a channel of that, and we should be at the very least energized afterwards.
Yes.
It should not be, us being drained. And, the concept of thought that we have govern that.
It's true.
What thought process and learning level are we in that, to me, I was always taught that all I am as in a healing aspect is I'm the channel for it to flow through.
Right.
And to sincerely give yourself over to being that conduit, but to not look at it as something that is wearing on me.
Right. And that's why you have to have healthy balance in your life with all of these things. So, Greg, what's another limitation that we should focus on today?
Well, I think some of the limitations is the fact that we allow the physical world to divert us from being centered and be calm.
So the distractions of that.
It's so many distractions occurring. And with the planet right now, and everybody on the planet has been more narcissistic and manipulative. And I find it amazing that,
let's not affirm that.
I don't even watch
the
news. It's like, there's so many opinions and it's not news. So I don't watch the news. I don't get caught up in that.
Right.
But I look at it as something that in our own circle of life, how are we loving and sharing and progressively moving forward in a good way? And I know people now, like I remember just a short time ago, I was walking a restaurant, I held the door for someone and they look at you like, what do you want? And it's like,
I say thank
what
you.
energy are they functioning in? So we share with them an energy of a smile, hello, healing, and then you see the change. I had one gentleman I held the door for. He walks inside, and I said, well, have a nice evening. And he turned and looked at me, and he goes, you too.
You too.
He says, have a nice evening. About it. And it's like his energy from walking in the doorway to his energy of turning around and commenting that to me, there was a healing energy there.
Yes, that's true.
So it's like, what can we do in that acceptance that not everybody is in the highest level of harmony? And
we're responsible for ours.
Yeah, we can bring harmony to them and give them the opportunity to share in it.
So maybe where you're leaning into that in terms of mediumship and a reading or preparing to do public message work is working and allowing your energy to raise up to do the higher vibrational work, so that you can sustain through message work or through readings. It's very necessary to have that positivity and that amiability with spirit and with the client or the recipient of the message. And so one of the things to get past that barrier would be to raise your own vibration, so that you're greeting, the way I look at it, and this is the way I teach my students, is that your higher self is greeting their higher self.
Yes.
And that's who you want to talk to.
Well, think of it this way. Have you ever had it that somebody would actually respond to you, and you're being very positive, you're being very open, you're being very sharing, and they respond by, nobody can be that happy.
That must be fake.
And I look at that energy, and I've seen it happen in people. And I find, to me, and I'm not meaning it as funny, but I find it funny that they're not realizing what they've locked themselves into.
Well, they're having a little bit of a pout or a cynical time, and we have to honor people go through those situations, and they've been hurt. But let's go back to our topic today of moving past limitations in your mediumship. What are some other things that you think that have been limiting, either within delivery of messages or in delivery of a reading?
Well, I think part of that would be the fact that our own faith and trust in ourselves, and also the idea of realizing, we can have bad days too, and we can feel like we're not adequate at the moment, or we just had some events in our lives that upset us.
Right.
And I look at the energy of that, and I've always been able to set that aside and say, all right, maybe I need to go back to that. But it's the energy of, we're here now, and this is what we're here for. And the ability to
get refocused
and recenter. And I see people at times where we have one diversion and another diversion, and pretty soon we're caught up in the diversions instead of what our focus and purpose would be.
Right.
And I see some people that have very difficult time, let's say, recentering themselves, that this is what I'm here for to do.
So, in terms of message work, I'm a person as a medium that I prefer to go direct to a person that is there in the congregation, and I don't go indirect. And so that helps me to stay very focused with that recipient's spirit communicators, and to keep it focused in my conversation with them, so I don't get distracted by the rest of the folks that are there.
This way.
But people who go indirect, there are a lot of distractions energetically that can happen during that time.
Well, it creates a confusion. Now, this is my own thinking.
Yeah, we're sharing our own opinions.
It's creating a confusion of energy, because not only are you picking up on that, but you're picking up on all these inputs of other energies, which to me adds to the confusion instead of adding to the accuracy. And if we're really going direct to the person, then we're getting the accuracy of whatever's coming through, and we're not on a conscious level or a spirit level being diverted. We're in the purity of, this is the guidance of the message.
Right.
And I see people that do the other ways of doing it, and I'm sorry, some of them live in confusion.
So it's something to be cautious about in your own development as a medium, that if you are going to work in the indirect way, that you have to cut through a lot of the extra static that could be coming in versus that. So that's a choice that you're making. And when you work directly or indirectly, and if somebody says, well, I can't work directly, it doesn't seem to work for me, that's a limitation that they have. What would you say to them, Greg?
That's the choice they made, because obviously in their conscious life, they're doing a lot of things indirectly. And that's a reflection of their life in their own personal life. Therefore, they reflect that right into the reading. And I've watched that happen where, I've been around a lot of mediums in my life, and I see people that are very direct in their own life, and they're very direct in their mediumship. They're very direct in their healing. And then you see people that are very indirect in everything they're doing, and that's the way they function. So that's how they're going to carry it into readings, which I think can be very confusing for the person receiving a message, because then they're like, wait a minute,
who are we talking to? Which
way? Which way is this really meaning? Or they gave me this, and this, which just to a degree at times is contradictory. And it's like there's not a clarity of, boom, here's the answer, or here's the guidance. instead of it being, well, it could be this and this and this and that.
Now, the only time I would say that there could be a difference of opinion with my mediumship would be if I was talking to a couple different spirit communicators. Sometimes the dad has one opinion that the mother does not share.
Yes, absolutely.
Or maybe the grandmother has another one. And so it just depends on those things. But it's usually very focused. I know which one is having that opinion at the table. At the spirit table, shall we say.
Yeah.
But when people work indirectly, it can be difficult because they're thinking, well, that fits for this person and that. And so it's just something to be cautious about if you're going to go indirect in a public way, that you may need to get really focused to give that as a higher quality or higher caliber message.
Well, think of it this way.
Just a note.
To me, I watch people that go indirect, and it takes forever for them to get something out, and then they're still left confused. And I find that if someone's going direct, and it's just like less time spent on it, less energy spent on it, and the clarity's there without a doubt.
Yes.
And I see people that, in a sense, leave a reading with confusion instead of leaving a reading with, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and this is correct.
Right. Now, here's the thing. I had a mediumship teacher who once said, and to some extent I agree with her, she had said that if a person understands 100%, you haven't done your job. That's very interesting to me. Like, when I hit around 80 to 90% is what she was saying versus 100, because some things are for later. Those are discoveries for later. So there may be a few confusions in that sense, but the vast majority should make sense in that. And a client or the recipient should be able to go, oh my gosh, that is my mom, because the medium brought through this evidence and that evidence, and this is how my mom would talk to me, and this is what we would talk about.
Yeah.
So that's the distinction I think we should make.
You know what I find also when you said about the percentage.
Yeah, it's very interesting that she had said that.
I find
it's
that
a British medium.
There's at times people may not understand what you're giving because you've given some things very direct, and they got it, and it's actually building the foundation of trust.
Right.
That they're expanding the ability of trusting.
Yes.
And then you give a few things that they look at you like, well, I don't know how that fits.
Right.
Well, it's not supposed to fit then.
Right.
It's supposed to fit later. And I've had it happen where spirit would gain their complete trust in what's coming through because there's such an accuracy. And then they would bring in the things that don't pertain to the moment.
Right. And there's a little bit of,
And down the road, like I had a gentleman yesterday that I talked to, and he said to me, he goes, Greg, he goes, 2 years later, that exact event occurred.
And I understood in those
and
moments.
I knew what to do with it, and I knew what you said about it. And he said it worked perfectly.
Yes.
But it was 2 years later.
2 years later.
And I
different
find
time and space for spirit.
There's no time and space with spirit.
Yeah.
And it's a circumstance that I've had it happen where people have gotten a reading and they'd come back to me a few years later.
Yes.
And they would go, oh my God.
Yes, I totally get it now.
And
that happens.
Like one lady said to me one time, she goes, well, you read for my mother and you talked about her being in a beautiful energy and that she was going to step into this beautiful energy. Well, she passed over. And all her loved ones were there and preparing her to be in this beautiful energy.
Right.
And she was in really rough shape in the sense of physical health. But it was so interesting that the way they gave the message, some of the family would have not thought of it as her passing. They'd have thought of it as her, well, she's going to be getting better, or she's going to feel better.
Sometimes the healing is in the transition, though.
Yeah. Yes. And I found it fascinating because when the daughter came back, the daughter said to me, she goes, you told me that she's going to feel good, look good, and then she'll step out. Yeah. Well, you could refer to that as the rally, before they leave.
Rally.
And the mother said to her, she said, I've never felt better.
Yeah.
And it came through in a message to the daughter that when your mother tells you that she never felt better,
then it's time.
It's time.
It's time.
And she stayed there with her. And the lady closed her eyes and said, I love you, and went to sleep.
Yeah. And then that was that. Let's talk about the limitation of the word no. N-O. Let's talk about that one, because that can cause a lot of student mediums, developing mediums, even more advanced or professional mediums, a huge a no. I received a no. And then that can cause, it can start setting them up for other limitations. Let's hit that one. That's a biggie.
That to me happens all the time with everybody somewhere.
Yes.
And I find that I've learned that if someone was to say, no, I don't recognize that, it's like, that's okay, put it on the shelf. A little later on will make sense to you. And I just roll on to the next thing.
Sure.
And I find that when the people are responding in such an emphatic manner, this is a no, it's like, I find that whether they're consciously aware of it or not, they don't want to hear it.
Right, they don't want to hear it.
And at that time, they're not capable of hearing it.
Now, could a medium be off? Yes, a medium could be off
in
their interpretation or how they're receiving it.
Well, when you said interpretation,
that happens.
That is also a circumstance that, are they allowing themselves to be the conduit, or are they adding in or diverting what's being brought through?
Right.
Because I find that when they add in or divert something, then the person says no. Because they don't recognize it.
So, but what happens is that there's almost like a flinchiness that can happen. Oh no, they're about to say no. So one of the things that I've tried to reinforce with my students is that how you handle the word no is very important.
Yes.
And you need to maintain your poise through that experience. And remember how you were talking about how there are layers of action and inaction in what we do. How you handle a no dictates how you'll handle the rest of your life.
Is it going to derail you in what you're doing?
The life or even the mediumship, right?
Yeah.
So you have to not hold on to that. Don't hold on to the yeses too much. Don't hold on to the nos. And you're just allowing things to flow through you. Be like water, and learn how to pivot through those situations.
Well, I remember being on TV, and I went to the audience, and they had a huge audience of people, and I gave a message to a lady, and I'd always ask her, as I went to them, I'd say, may I come to you with a message? And she answered yes.
Yes.
And I gave her a message, and she says, no, I don't recognize that. It was her mother. And her mother did not see eye to eye.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she not only didn't want to recognize that, but she didn't want to communicate with her. Her sister, sitting right beside her, went into tears, and she goes, I know who that is. That's our mom.
Yeah.
And then I said, I have to shift to you. And I gave her the message, which was in essence for both of them.
Yes.
But it was really, the sister was the one that mom wanted to really impact and help her understand, but she just completely rejected it.
Right.
And it had nothing to do with the medium being off. It was just her resistance.
And we have to not take it personally if we receive a no, because if you carry that flinch response in you about it, then it starts to engage the analytical mind. We don't want to engage the analytical mind when we are doing mediumship.
Oh, absolutely.
That's not where we want to be in spirit mind.
Like the sister completely responded.
Yes.
And was emotional and open and shared.
She was ready to receive that message.
Because that matters
whether the recipient is.
And I look at that energy, and it's like, I in my mind, I can't imagine carrying that energy in me for years.
Well, this is kind of a little off topic, but if you do readings for people, let's say sisters come and one after another come for reading, the mom and dad can have a very different relationship with one child versus another child. And how how they relate. It's almost like you're talking to a completely different spirit communicator.
Yes.
Because that's the persona they have and recognition they have with them. It's totally fascinating.
Well, I
topic.
find the recognition in yourself of not having this reaction to someone saying no. You know, I just look at it that sometimes Spirit will give me the message again, and they're reinforcing, no, we're correct.
Right.
And other times, I've actually heard it in my left ear, move on.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to move on with that. But I say one of the limitations for mediumship is if you are reading for different members of a family, be open to the idea that spirit communicator may present differently. Oh, so that could be a limitation in your own mind. And you think, oh, well, you know, I just talked to that mom. I know it's the same mom. Doesn't mean it's the same mom.
Oh, boy.
So that's just a quick thing in dealing with
I find that so true, that the perceptions of a, quote, family, and then you see the individuality of who's really close, who's not really close, who is a very agreeable energy versus who's definitely not.
Right.
You know, I've seen some resistances at times, and it's like, whoa.
So we just deal with that compassionately, because that's a really important thing, and to just be able to translate it for that. So let's see, how it translates practically. Medium who does a session indirectly, please. I'm not a medium. So indirectly, as we were talking about before, is if you are at a public meeting and you're giving out messages, and usually Greg and I work directly, so we know that spirit is directing us to a particular individual, and we say we're coming to this person, and we start connecting with their spirit communicator and give a message. Indirectly means that they're giving information. I'm connecting with a woman who would have passed from this. She's giving, possibly they'll give a name or other situation or evidence who can take this message. So the medium gives out information, and then people in the audience go, I think that's my mom, or I think that's my,
And you end up with 2 or 3 people with their hands up.
It could be like that. And we're not trying to invalidate indirect mediumship. It's a different way of working that can be have a lot of distraction involved with it. And some people, it's one of the limitations that they have in their mediumship. So yeah, a lot of people are like, this is so interesting from a non-medium point of view. So yes, it's beautiful.
Think of it this way. You know, I've been around people that are very direct in their conversations about anything, whether it's mediumship or not. And then you have people that are so indirect that it's like, what do they really say? You know, and I've seen that happen in just regular conversations with people. They said a lot of nothing.
Yeah. And there's an abstractness to them. And so that's why I do encourage people, as mediums, we don't want to be too woo-woo. We want to be balanced, have harmony, be grounded, so that we can be very present in our lives for the people that are around us. And I really work to be 100% with whoever I'm with. Yeah. If I'm talking to Greg and you guys, I'm talking to you guys. I'm not thinking about anything else beyond that. Or when I'm with a client, that's who I am with. When I'm with my husband and children, that's who I'm with. So that's how I work, and how I encourage other people. Well, if you want to be on 100%.
I think that's a wonderful way of doing it. And when you get into the mediumship level, to me, when someone is in trauma, whatever the trauma may be, but the trauma, I find that if you can be very direct, and spirit, I know, will bring something in that makes them stop, look, and listen, and it gains trust, it gains faith in what you're giving them. It allows them to realize here's truth coming through, which opens them up to hear more. And as you share it directly with them, then you're taking them away from the trauma feeling and the disrupted energy to a harmony of helping them have a direction.
Yes. And
when they have a direction, then they're able to focus and able to achieve then what steps do I need to be taking. I have clients that, I'll talk to and they've had a crisis. Then I've had clients where quite a few clients actually, that they make an appointment and there's nothing going on in their lives.
Oh, yeah.
And they
that's
make the
fine.
appointment, and like one lady said to me, she goes, Greg, I talked to you in the winter, I talked to you during Lilydale, and she said, if something comes up in between, I may talk to you then. But she said, I'm looking forward, and what is going to be coming that I need to have an alertness to or awareness to, or how to handle something. Is there something that's unexpected that I'm not aware of? And her whole intent would be looking forward.
And there are other people who are just wanting to have a sweet conversation with their loved ones in spirit, because they are not going to cultivate their mediumship abilities. They really like that they have a trusted individual that they can have that kind of conversation and develop and continue that rapport with the other side. But I have some other things that for limitation.
Well, I had a lady come in one time that I read for, and she was 97. And she said, I have nothing going on in my life that, is any tragedy. She says, I just want to speak to my husband and my loved ones.
Yes.
And it was so fascinating that the wonderful energy stepped in, and my goodness, the number of people that came through, it was just phenomenal. And
it's just old home week, it's like beautiful to have the reunion.
Yeah.
Because it's that kind of reading.
After the reading, I had, in between clients, I had time. So I walked out in the other room, and I'm standing there, and I heard Spirit say to me, thank you for sharing. Because she was going to be stepping out of the body.
And she needed to know she had a huge crew.
And
that was
here's this whole crew there. And
Yeah.
my God, I'm talking like 25 people came through.
That's wonderful.
And it was just fascinating. So it's like, I look at it as something that we're being watched over all the time. Our guides, our teachers, our loved ones are around us. And to thank them when you experience an awareness that, hey, I saw the shadow, I saw the light flicker, I saw things happen that I know spirit related.
Yes.
To recognize that and to verbalize, whether you do it mentally or verbally, to thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. And I find that really brings comfort to everyone. And we're then becoming more centered because we're being aware of not letting ourselves get caught up in the physical world and all these diversions.
True.
And we're allowing spirit to be recognized in our life on a daily level. And that's very important to me.
It's very important. And it's definitely an aspect of connection through mediumship. And I would say for people who are beginners in their mediumship journey, know that moving past limitations will be preset notions you might have about, well, if they love me, they would communicate to me right away or in this particular manner. And you have to kind of manage your expectations of how they will come through. And if you are a beginner medium, giving and receiving messages if within circles and classes, some of your limitations will be that your preset notions of how something should come forward. And then as you move to an intermediate level, the limitations are, well, that was really cool. I was able to get that information. How do I build on that? And sometimes when people get to an intermediate level, they start to get a little overconfident. There's an overconfidence thing, and then they kind of have a crash burn. And then they were getting some no's and how to handle some of the no's, or maybe they're misinterpreting some of the information.
Well, what I find that in mediumship that I've witnessed happening, we may have one way of feeling and sensing something that becomes really clear.
Yes.
And we've practiced it enough that we're really confident in it. And when you were saying like shifting the intermediate,
yes,
I find that spirit now in my life, when I was a kid, I could be a mime and I could literally walk like the person in spirit, talk like the person in spirit, do the things the spirit, the movements would be.
Yeah.
I remember one time a gentleman had polio and before he passed. And it was a family, and the mother and the two daughters were there. And they had other languages they could speak. and I was 10, and I stood up from the footstool. They were sitting on the couch. I was on the footstool, and I got up and I said, I feel this is the way he would have walked.
Yeah.
And here he had polio, and I walked the way he walked.
With the polio.
And the mother went into tears,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh my God. And I reached over my side pocket. There wasn't there, but I pulled out a watch, and I opened the watch, and I looked at the watch, and I put the watch back in my pocket. And I looked at the lady, and I said, you have his watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she had the pocket watch with the chain on it.
Yes.
So it's like when you get the clarity where you're giving it direct and it's unquestionable,
Yes.
that opens up the whole aspect of sharing with them and reading for them immensely.
It does. It really
And
does.
once they have that, it's like it's just such an easy flow.
It is an easy flow.
And
But
it's not a resistance of any kind then, or
But
questioning.
Would you say that as people are going through their stages, there are different limitations that they're
Yes,
meeting up against?
Exactly.
And then as they're wanting to approach advanced mediumship
Mhm.
connections, with that, then there sometimes you've learned certain channels that you work best with spirit.
Yeah.
So there you start to you're wanting to repeat things. You're wanting to
You want to stick with what works.
yes, whatever clairs you are strongest in, whatever is dominant.
And
for
then
you
spirit
in that.
brings through another way of feeling things.
That's right. All of a sudden you're
Yeah.
like, whoop, spirit's working with me differently than they have in the past.
Mhm.
So be aware that some of the limitations you have are, again, managing your expectations of how you think spirit should come through for you.
Well, what I've seen too is people feeling completely confident in one way of doing it. And it's like, I've got it. I'm at the top. I'm handling it. Everything's in order.
Right.
And spirit goes, okay, we've learned that one really well. And we'll set this aside. Now we're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And then it's like not starting over, but in a way, it's a completely different energy. And what does this mean now? When
So
I
you have to
feel
kind of
these
be
things?
ready for the fact that as you are progressing through your mediumship development, things can change, things can alter. Even some of your spirit team can shift as you
absolutely.
are doing higher vibrational work and doing more intense work. Because let's say you just started and some nice messages, and then you're moving to a professional level where you're having to be on. You have clients, you have all of those things. There are different levels of limitations and expectations during those times.
Well, I find also when I was a child, I think I was blessed very much with the fact that my teachers, all of them, there was an old way of thinking in some mediumship way back that if you had one way of doing it, that was the only way you're going to do it.
Right.
All right. Either you seen it, you hear it, you felt it. That was it. One way. And my teachers always stressed to me that when you're working with someone, what's the best way that they're going to understand? What is the best in-depth message you can give them? And in what way are you giving them that message?
Yes.
Are you doing it through seeing, feeling, sensing, words, whatever form? And I find that I've had it happen in a singular reading. They would bring through every dimension of how to do it.
Yes, different clairs.
And
yes.
I find that that to me is fascinating because I see some people that you get comfortable with, I know how to do it this way. And then we literally would rather do that than anything else.
Because it's easy, what's known. And so the point we're really trying to make with this in terms of being ready for those kinds of levels is you want to be open to the different clairs for a couple of different reasons. One, because the spirit communicators, sometimes that's the way they are good at delivering information.
Absolutely.
They're visual, so they're going to give you visual information. They love to talk. They're going to give things to you clairaudiently. If they're feeling people, in terms of personality and relationship or things that they're good at delivering, what happened to their body, then that's the information that they'll give. So it depends on the spirit communicator, but it can also be dependent on what channels, energetic channels are open within the medium. So you kind of have to try to get a matchup between the spirit communicators and the medium.
Well, that's there. and then you can add in the person you're reading for.
Yep.
And what way could they receive things in the most in-depth manner,
Yes.
the most meaningful manner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that if you were using words, it may not make sense to them.
Right.
But if you describe a picture to them, or if you give them a feeling, you recognize this feeling and they have it.
Yes.
You know, I've had it happen many times where, like when I was teaching a fellowship and I'd have, say, 28 people there in a class, I would give information and I would watch the energy that the people that got it,
mm-hmm.
and then there are people that didn't get it.
Right, right.
And I would go back over it in a completely different way, a different energy. And I've watched a couple of them, like the one gentleman went, I got it.
You got it.
All right.
Yeah.
But it's like when I first did it, he had no clue.
Right.
But it's like to recognize that we're working with spirit or guides.
Mm-hmm.
We're working through what we have as limitations in ourselves.
Yes.
Then we're looking at what channel is the channel to utilize with that person that they really get the depth out of it that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, don't feel uneasy when you're feeling something and you feel like you're not quite focused on how to give it. Trust what you're feeling with it and start to give it.
Yes.
Allow yourself to let it out. Holding it in and saying nothing, or sitting back and in a conscious level, we shift to dissecting it. It's like we're not giving them the message and we're not being the channel then. We're needing to relax with the idea that, okay, start to give what I'm feeling. Even if I don't have all of it in order, you know, it's not the idea of having, we wrote the book and now I can read it to you. All right,
there you go.
Here is a few things that I'm getting. And it may be just a few words, may not even be a whole sentence, but it'll come through.
Yeah, you give and then you'll receive more.
Yeah, it keeps going. And that's something that we have a hard time in the conscious world of really trusting that we will get more.
Right.
Because I know some people go, well, I got that and that's all I got. Well, if you don't give what you
give
got,
that
you're
out
not going to be getting more.
Keep going with your momentum. It's like saying, well, I'm not going to exercise because I don't have weights. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, you're going to go exercise. You'll find other ways of doing these things and just build the momentum until, you know, mind, body, spirit. It's something that you start to attune yourself. You're calibrating yourself as a medium to do the work of spirit.
Yeah.
To do that, to help people communicate effectively with their loved ones and know that life and love are continuing on.
Well, that's so important. And it's all the idea, too, that I see a lot of people that are not necessarily focused on being a medium in a public manner, but to enhance their life, their family's life, their friends' lives, you know, to focus in that form. I see that every day. Yeah. And that's where we're learning that these different ways of feeling and knowing things. And to me, and I would think with you too, it's like the more direct we can feel something, the more direct we can share it and the more meaningful it becomes.
Yes. So sometimes it's about making sure you're clear within yourself. Yeah. And getting that baseline of what's you so that you can really be aware of what's them.
Well, I had the class during the eclipse there, you know, and we did a mediumship class, and I think it was like, what was it, 37 people or something there. And it was wonderful and a nice energy. And when I was doing the mediumship, I could look at the people and I realized who's really there, present and tapped in, and who was attempting in their own way.
Sure.
And it's like to work with the energy and to be able to work with something you're sharing that gradually draws everybody together. And it's like a big battery then. And everyone is able to feel more, sense more, and be aware more than what they normally would on their own necessarily.
Right. In a group, that energy starts to power things. And the spirit's very attracted to that. And that when you're giving or receiving messages, other people are supporting that.
Yeah. The whole support really energy is there and magnified.
I realize we're a bit over time. Is there any last things we want to share with folks about, moving past limitations in your mediumship?
Well, to recognize in ourselves, don't allow ourselves to have a little fearful moment of, do I dare say that? Or do I dare allow myself to take that step? Because you can do it in a gentle manner. And I find people respond to things and share in the heart center. If we're focused on the heart center and we're focused at the soul level, there's nothing is going to be wrong or bad. And it's a trust level you build.
Right. And so once you have that kind of clarity and positivity in yourself, you're not going to give bad or negative messages. Right. So a big limitation for student mediums and even up to advanced mediums is making sure that they can hold that energy.
Yes.
Because there can be an arc that happens in the course of a message or a course of a reading. And so sometimes what people are having to do is learn how to maintain that positive energy throughout the duration of the spirit communication.
And that's the most important connection, because if we step away from that and start consciously thinking, we've lost it.
We've lost it. Yeah. So there's a it's something you train for. The reason why they say mediums, train is because you're really trying to mind, body, spirit, align yourself for that purpose so that you can maintain, you can sustain, so you can handle these things you need to pivot through. And that's only going to come through practice. And it's not going to come just because I've decided to be a medium. No, this is something that takes
as long as we're
natural proclivity, but also
we set the intent
with open
and we
mind.
have that depth of sincerity in setting the intent. And we're going to move into it because spirit world will step in and help us get there if we show them that we're really desiring to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. It's so great when he comes on the show. And
thank you, everyone.
We appreciate everybody's kind attention, and we hope this has really helped some of you move past limitations in your mediumship. This will be probably one you'll want to rewatch. Maybe next year you'll want to rewatch this every year and just see what buzzes in you and what starts to alert you in terms of what you need to be focusing on in your own mediumship journey.
Come to Lilydale and enjoy it.
That's right, because we have a great 2024 summer season program that's available. I wanted to just show you guys this. This is the workshop guide that you can get as the summer program for 2024. You can call it the Lilydale Assembly office, but this is also available on the LilydaleAssembly.org website. You can register for classes. Definitely make sure that you book in with whoever you want to as medium, because appointments are going by really fast. My summer's almost booked up, and you're going to want to get lodging. You're going to want to make sure that you're all set.
And if you can stay on the grounds and experience the vortex of energy here, it's really quite amazing.
It is.
I've had people come here and they would go and have a hotel room here on the grounds. And the one gentleman said to me, he says, I got here and I thought it was perfectly okay, but I slept 14 hours.
So somebody needed a deep, restful, peaceful energy. So there are hotels on the grounds of Lilydale, guest houses that you can check into. And again, information about accommodations, lodging, all of that kind of information, ticket prices, everything, go to LilydaleAssembly.org. That's the website.
Yes.
And if anybody wants to find out more information about my classes that I mentioned earlier, the one that's happening this Saturday, and then the new series that starts on Monday, please go to my website, willawhite.com. And you can also check out Greg's website, gregkehn.com. And, or is it Rev? Is it Rev?
I think it's Rev Greg Kehn.
Rev. All of a sudden it was like, Spirit's like, no, say, put the Rev in there. Reverend is what that means.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. And tune in next week. I'll have another great guest on the show. I want to say it's Wendy Corsi Stubb talking about the Lilydale mysteries. And then the show after that, I'm really excited about, because we'll be talking about the future of mediumship with Joe Shield and the advancements in science and AI when it comes to mediumship.
Wonderful.
So that'll be a really interesting show.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, I've got some great guests lined up for the Wednesdays to come. So tune in, same time, same channel here, Wednesdays with Will. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.